Hello, welcome back. My name is Ari, and today we're gonna talk about my least favorite books of 2020. So these are my top 10 worst books of 2020. A couple of, notices, whatever. If you like these books, good for you. I don't care. We obviously have different taste in books. Sometimes I'm gonna say your favorite book is trash. Sometimes maybe I just didn't like it. It's gonna depend. This review will be a little bit ranty, and it's going to have spoilers as the spoilers pertain to things that, I hated about the book. A lot of books on this list are on this list because they are racist, xenophobic, homophobic, or some sort of other aggression or microaggressions, or maybe a shit ton of microaggressions, as the example of one book is. But not all of them. Some of them I just didn't like. So without further ado, we'll start with book number 10, which is The City in the Middle of the Night by Charlie Jane Anders. Now, this book doesn't really have any huge problematic content in it. I didn't like this because it is a character-driven narrative with characters that I thought were flat as hell and boring. If you're gonna do a character-driven narrative, have interesting characters. This wasn't that for me. The author tells you their motivations instead of showing you motivations. It's a I don't believe that these characters are actually motivated by the shit you're telling me. Because why? That doesn't make any sense. Multiple characters will just swear up and down that they are going to die for each other. I love you so much, I'm going to die for you. But why? The person you're talking to is an asshole. You even say that they're an asshole. Why would you die for this person? The fuck? There are the minor problematic content in this book is queer baiting, where one of the characters reads like she has a crush on her best female friend. It's never really come out and stated through most of the book that she is attracted to her sexually, or wants to be in a relationship with her, but it's described that way. And once it does come out, when she tells her friend, I'm in love with you, the reaction is just the most disgusting. Oh my god, you're gross, there's something wrong with you, why would you be attracted to a woman? It just felt so bad, even knowing that character that she has a crush on is supposed to be the bad guy, or a less likable character. Just reading it just felt so gross. I don't like reading about people emotionally hurting other people, purposefully emotionally hurting other people, where it's I know that, or where one character knows that another person has a crush on them and uses them because of that affection, for their own personal gain, and then once the character finally gets up the nerve to say something about it, or once they become not so useful anymore, that person will attack the other person and then make them feel bad. I don't want to read about that. I don't like characters like that. And I don't like the ignorance behind the character who it happens to. In this case, in this particular instance, it feels like this girl should have seen it coming. And that's just a flaw for me in the writing. There are four main characters. Sophie has really extreme, really overwritten teen dramatic feelings that don't make any sense in the context of the book. Like, there is nothing about the people that she's interacting with that deserve her level of commitment. Like, there's nothing that the author has sold me as far as like why Sophie is so committed to people. Bianca's just a shitty person. That's it. I just didn't like her character for the way she treats Sophie. Mouth is boring generally, and she's got some weird childhood trauma that only affects her when it's convenient for the plot of the story, and other times when it should affect her, like based on what the trauma is, it doesn't, because that's more convenient for the plot of the story. And that was just poorly written to me. And then Alyssa is the fourth girl that we kind of follow, and she doesn't have a point. Like, she does nothing for the story at all, as far as I could tell. So she didn't need to be in the story at all. The ending was dumb, which didn't help at all. Like, at all. But that is enough rant for book number 10. Let's go on to book number 9. At number 9 is For Whom the Bell Tolls by Ernest Hemingway. Like, a lot of the dislike for this book is I went into this book thinking that this was a like book about guerrilla warfare and like emotional suffering, but there's maybe less than 100 pages in the 500-page book of like actual anything battle. This is all kind of like planning and lead up stuff. And like telling stories. Most of it was just boring, like just straight up boring in my opinion. And boring is fine. Some people will like this much better than I do. My problem with this book was the love interest. This bitch was the most annoying human being that I have ever read. And it was like insta-love. Like, he saw her and he was in love with her and he's going to spend the rest of his life with her. And she was like super clingy. And then she would say like stupid shit. Like, they are in the middle of war. They are guerrilla fighters in the middle of a fucking war. She has been rescued because like she was being raped by like people from the other, like soldiers from the other side, and she was rescued by these guerrilla fighters, and now she lives with the guerrilla fighters and kind of like cooks for them. And she instantly falls in love with this man. There's no emotional trauma attached to like what happened to her, other than he can't leave her. And it's just like clingy, and he's like going off to fight a battle, and she was like, if you leave me, you don't love me. And it's just like, bitch, you're in the middle of a war. What is wrong with you? But oh my god, Ernest Hemingway cannot write women. But yeah, that one is definitely like personal reason I hated that. But damn, that bitch was annoying. Next up at number 7 is a book called Sirius by Olaf Stapleton. And this is a 1940s sci-fi about a dog with human level intelligence. And the dog's owner basically did medical experiments on puppies as when they were like just born and their craniums were soft, and basically enlarged their brains. And then apparently if you make a dog's brain large enough, they gain human level intelligence. Which, like, obviously the science around that is dumb, but I can like ignore that mostly because it was written in the 40s and the scientific advancements then weren't great. That wasn't the part about this that bothered me. This is a very like woe is me type book where it's from Sirius's perspective and he just like laments how awful his life is because he is such an intelligent being but he doesn't have opposable thumbs. And that just feels bad for like disability rep. Like plenty of people do not have like full use of their limbs and they still can lead happy, fulfilling lives and not like be this little bitchy creature about it, which is the entire book is just woe is me, I could be so much more if only I had opposable thumbs. And it's just like, that was stupid. The second problem with this was Sirius, like this is from Sirius's perspective and he was just such an unlikable character, which kind of ties into the first problem. So like I hated reading about him because he was such an asshole, self-centered, narcissistic asshole. And like, if you're reading from like character-driven narratives like that, if you don't like the character, you're not gonna like the book. But the third thing is the real clincher about why this made it on this list. And that's bestiality. Because you go this entire book talking about how Sirius grew up with this young girl who was the inventor's like biological daughter. And there's all of this like sexual tension between her and the fucking dog. Ugh. Like, ew. No. But yeah, that's why that one's on this list. Next up at number 7, I think, is Diary of a Drug Fiend by Aleister Crowley. This was surprisingly boring for being a book that's supposed to be about drug addiction. This book was, again, something that I read for my Century Reads. It was written early in the 20th century, and it's supposed to be about, like, one of the very, very first books in existence about drug addiction. Where before this book, drug addiction was considered, like, you just don't have the willpower. Like, if you're addicted to a drug or a substance, it's your own problem. It's not anything like medical condition with it. You're just lazy, and that's why you're addicted. Like, you're not trying hard enough to give it up. And this is supposed to, and it does, kind of approach drug addiction as an actual addiction and a problem. The two main characters of this book are addicted to cocaine, and you travel like the ups and downs of their lives from different perspectives of like the high of starting cocaine and then the lows of having issues finding cocaine, or not the money to purchase it, and then the highs of go back up to the highs when cocaine becomes more easily accessible. This takes place like right after doctors started realizing that maybe we shouldn't put cocaine in all of like the cough medicine or our soft drinks. That maybe this is not great for everyday consumption. The problem that I have with this book is a spoiler, so if you would like to skip this one, just go to the next book cover. And that is the end of this book. Basically goes right back to if you have enough willpower, you can do drugs. Where they go seek help from like a cult, which was weird, but I didn't like it. It's a story, I didn't actually hate it. And they learned that they can be around drugs and choose not to take it after they have gotten like clean. Like they have gone through all the withdrawals, gone through all like the shitty things, they are off the drugs, they are out of their systems, and then like the owner of this cult or whatever is like, now I give you all of the cocaine you want because I know you're able to stop. And you're like, no, 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 no. Addictions are things of a lifetime. What are you doing? And I understand, like I get, like this is early in the 20th century, like people did not know about addiction then. Like addiction was a brand new thing. You can't realize that addiction can't just be temporarily like cured forever. It's a lifetime thing. I still didn't have to like reading about it. It was also really boring. Didn't help. At number 6, I am starting to get into my 1-star reads of this year, and this spot goes to The Identicals by Ellen Hildebrand. Now, this book was just a mess. The author was so lazy in her character writing and character development, and the idea of this book is supposed to be like a redemption story where characters go into this book where they're kind of shitty people, and then through change and blah blah blah, loving your sister, they are redeemed. But the way she wrote her characters, they were so shitty that I wasn't sold on the redemption arc. Like, you're still shitty people. You still did all of these really shitty things that you never bothered fucking apologizing for. And all of a sudden, because you found a boyfriend, I'm supposed to think that you're redeemed? Like, no. No. There's general problematic bullshit. There was racism introduced, like a character was racist to make her a bad person. Like, the author couldn't think of another way to describe somebody as a bad person without them being racist. And it was excused in the book as she's just old-fashioned. And it's like, you can make somebody a terrible person without just throwaway racist comments. Or if you're going to make them racist, make them like racist and then show that there are consequences to being this shitty person, not just I hate those N-words and then you never mention anything else about it again, ever. That's lazy writing and racist for the sake of being racist. There was another situation of like systematic racism used for why some black women hadn't heard a rumor, where it's basically like this woman is like a city council member, but she hadn't heard this rumor about this girl sleeping around because she's black. Because apparently she doesn't talk to anybody white in the community, and it's the white community that's spreading the rumor. And it's just like, that's racist. Stop. There's a lot of slut shaming in this book. Like a lot of slut shaming. One of the main plot points is that this woman is having an affair, which I already didn't like, but all of the blame is put on her for this affair. She's single, she's sleeping with a married man, and he cheated on his wife. He pressured her into this relationship, even though she's kind of shitty for helping him cheat. He's still the one that cheated. Why is he not being ostracized? Why is he not the bad guy? There was the most absurd instance of fat shaming in this book, where a woman was called fat for being a size 4. What? Nope. The main characters of these books, the twin sisters, are 39 years old, and they are written like spoiled teen children. I kept forgetting that these women are nearly in their 40s. They are older than I am because they just behaved like they were 17 years old with crushes, and they're gonna get back at her twin sister by sleeping with the guy she has a crush on. Like, these are not adult women. They are jealous, dramatic teenagers. But yeah, overall, this was just a shit ton of microaggressions and like badly written characters and like lazy writing in general for the sake of drama. And that's why this is number 6 on my list. At number 5 is Scary Rednecks and Other Inbred Horrors by Weston Oshie and David Whitman. I thought, like, this is my fault. It's really my fault for reading this in the first place. I thought it was going to be funny, but it was written in the 90s, and 90s redneck is synonymous with homophobic women hating trash. And it's a short story collection, and some of these short stories were really just like, the plots were all about like being homophobic and hating women. There's no way to like describe why I hated this book without just telling you what the plot points are. And I should be able to just say what the entire plot of some of these short stories were, and then you should be able to like realize like, oh, yeah, I could see why that book's problematic. Plot 1. A snake bit my dick and my buddy has to suck it out or he's going to die. Plot 2. Aliens stuck a probe up my ass and I moaned once, so now all my buddies think I'm gay and they're gonna make fun of me about it for the rest of my life. Plot number 3. My buddy is a complete asshole to women and said something shitty to a voodoo lady. So she cursed him with a vagina, and the only way to get his dick back is to rape him while he's unconscious. I was gonna say have sex with him, but no. They get him drunk until he passes out and then sexually assault him without telling him they're going to do it first. They also have to dress him up in a dress and put makeup on him in order for their buddy to get hard in order to rape him. So not only is it women hating rape, it's also transphobic. And to David Whitman, who was the writer of all of these stories, just because you hate your own dick does not mean it's okay to write this shit. At all. At number 4 is a book that I recently received, or a book that I read in December that I got in a book box called The Wolves of Winter by Tyrell Johnson. And this one is just chock full of microaggressions. Like, this could have been a decent story if the author would have just bothered with a sensitivity reader and then taken out all of these like stupid microaggressions. There is a sexual assault scene twice in this book that gives nothing to the plot, other than this guy is an asshole and he wants to rape this little girl. That's it. Like, you could have removed both of those rape scenes or attempted rape scenes, and nothing would have changed in the rest of the plot. I think they were in there to make the guy an asshole, but I don't know if the author knows this, but people or men can be assholes without sexually assaulting anybody. Next, The Deadly Disease. This is like a post-apocalyptic pandemic book. The Deadly Disease is called the Asian flu or the yellow flu. And this was written in 2018. So before COVID, but they call it the Asian flu or the yellow flu. And there's even a conversation in the book about that's not racist, people are just sensitive. This flu was produced in a lab in Chicago. How is it called the Asian flu? Produced in Chicago by white men in America, and calling it the Asian flu or the yellow flu is not racist. It's a government-produced disease. That was specifically released to, like, target, like, to forward a war with China, and named like it was released by the Chinese people. Like, that's racist on purpose, or xenophobic, I guess. It's not racist. It's xenophobic on fucking purpose. A character is told that they are gay, or a character is described by the protagonist as gay because he doesn't want to have sex with her. Not wanting to fuck you, you dumb bitch, does not make somebody gay. It just means they're not attracted to you. I'm sorry to break it to you, but not everyone is attracted to your stank ass. There was a minor, like a micro, like compared to everything else, this was a very, very minor microaggression, but they're talking about a white girl with dreadlocks because her hair was dirty and matted, which this is a very well, like, recycled microaggression. Just say her hair was fucking matted. Like, that was the change. That's it. Done. It seems so, like, little and nothing compared to all the other microaggressions in this story, but it's still a problem. There's some fat shaming just for the spice of it. Post-apocalyptic. The world has ended, but dishes are still a woman's job. Missing chocolate after the end of the world where you can't get chocolate anymore. That's a girl's thing. A quiet girl is the perfect woman. What? Why was any of that necessary? This one was one of the worst ones. One of the plot points in this book is the government has created super soldiers, where it's genetically enhanced men who he has escaped from a government facility and he is trying to survive on his own, and he runs across the, protagonist of this book. He's identified by a set of serial numbers on his forearm. You really can't fucking tell me that you can't think of a better way to identify a government experiment than using Holocaust symbolism? Nothing comes to mind other than Holocaust symbolism. Really? There is use of the word retarded. It was 2018. There is not an excuse for that being a normal word for the time. So I'm gonna call you out on it. And the racism. There are only two characters in this entire book that are given a race. You have the main character who is of Irish descent, where when they're describing her at the beginning of the book, they talk about her pale skin, her freckles, her ginger hair. That is fine. Describing the main character and giving the main character race makes sense. The other character was described specifically as an Inuit woman, which is a Canadian Native American, a Canadian Indigenous American, and she was a medical experiment. Like, why? Why did it have to be an Indigenous person getting medically, like, experimented on? Why couldn't it have been, like, a white woman? Or just leave her race, like, completely vague? Like, why did it have to be pointed out specifically that this woman who was a medical experiment was an Indigenous woman? Did it make it okay to experiment on her because she's Indigenous? Ranty. I told you this would be ranty. The next book is number 3 is The Awakening of Helena Ritchie by Margaret Deland. Now, this was another one of the books that classic books that I read for my Centuries read. This was written in the early 20th century. There are a lot of instances of racism and sexism, which you can choose whether you want to put that off as a sign of the times or not. I don't excuse it for that, because I read a lot of books around it that didn't bother. Like, they weren't racist. It was written the same year or the year before, and it wasn't racist. Like, why does this book have to be racist? But the real problem with this book is going to spoil the ending. I obviously rated it 1 star, so I don't recommend anybody reading it. But if you don't want to spoil the ending of this really fucking awful book, then skip to the next book picture up here. And that is basically the entire plot of this book. Is this woman, Helena, her husband abused her and murdered their child in a drunken fit. And she has left him but cannot get a divorce from him because women do not have the option of divorcing their husbands, and he does not want to grant her a divorce. So she lives far away from him, and he pays for her upkeep and everything. So he's bought her a house, he doesn't visit her, he doesn't speak to her, nothing like that, but she can't be divorced. So, but she also, like, can't let it be known that she's even married at all. So everybody thinks she's like a spinster woman. A doctor and a preacher in this town come across a young homeless boy. Like, his parents have died and he needs someplace to stay. And they were like, oh, we'll give him to Miss Ritchie because she's this poor single older woman. She's in her 30s, but she's an old spinster. This poor single older woman, and she is missing out on having a child, but so she needs this child. And they obviously don't know that she's had a child that has been killed by her abusive husband, because she's not telling anybody, but she says, like, thank you, no. And they force this young boy on her. Like, they absolutely force her to take care of him. Like, bullying her into it, saying, like, he'll be homeless, he'll die, like, if you don't take care of him, no one will. He'll go to an orphanage and starve to death. And they basically bully her into taking this kid that she kindly states, like, thank you for thinking of me, I'm not interested. And she takes care of him over and lasts a few years and whatever, and falls in love with this child. It's like a great healing process for him. And then it's discovered that she is married and living in sin away from her husband, and the man who everybody thinks is her brother is really her lover, who she would like to marry but can't because she's still married to this abusive guy. And they, like, the big conclusion of the story is they take away the child from her and say, like, you're a horrible woman, you've been living in sin, you can't have this child that we forced you to take and you fell in love with. And it was horrible. Like, oh my God. Nobody deserves to be treated this way. I hated it. I hated it, I hated it, I hated it. Next up at number 2. This should be a really quick explanation, hopefully. Number 2 is Jaws by Peter Benchley. Is that who wrote Jaws? Yes, Peter Benchley. For those of you who are living under a rock, Jaws is a book about a killer shark. That's it. It's a killer shark who's terrorizing a vacation beach town, right? And because sharks terrorizing the town, no one can go into the water, and the tourist economy is losing out. That's it. And for anybody who's not heard me rant about Jaws yet, you're like, why is this like the second worst book of the year that you read, when you've just talked about like all of this like racist, homophobic, women-hating, problematic shit in all these other books? Because this is a book that's supposed to be about a killer shark, and in the middle of the fucking book there is a scene where 2 characters are having an affair, and they talk about how every woman wants to be raped by a black man. How they fantasize, every white woman in existence fantasizes about being raped by a black man. And the woman is part of this conversation to be like, yes, I am a woman and I agree that every woman wants this. Why does this need to be in a book about sharks? Why do you hate women and black men so much, Peter Benchley, that your entire book is just peppered with women hating and racism for absolutely no reason, because it's supposed to be about fucking sharks? What the fuck is this book? Just watch the movie. The director of the movie took out all of the racism and all of the sexism, and that's the story that this book should have been. What the fuck? That was the most jarring, horrible thing to like accidentally come across in the middle of a book about killer fucking sharks. And number 1 is Girl Stop Apologizing, a shame-free plan for embracing and achieving your goals by Rachel Hollis. This is the only self-help book that I read this year, and I obviously hated it since it's the worst book of the year. I have an entire rant review on it that's like me going chapter by chapter and pointing out like all the problematic things about it, so I will link that up in the eye for you. But I'm laughing right now because I've always just called it Girl Stop Apologizing, and I didn't read like the full title, but this is not shame-free. Like, this is a self-help guide written by a social media influencer. She has absolutely no background for helping you with her help. And she basically just recommends people do the stupidest, shittiest things as a form of self-help. She is very white and very privileged, and she has all the money in the world, and she basically tells like fans to like get into MLMs, stop talking to your children because you don't need to raise your children, you need to live your best life for yourself, and you achieve that by starting an MLM and somehow that's going to make you rich, even though Rachel Hollis has never actually been part of an MLM. You lie about your abilities, and again, leave your children, and then give up all of your free time to like find a job you love. And there's no excuse for it. Everybody has enough free time. There's no one in the world who's working like multiple jobs who can barely sleep. Give up your sleep then. Just there's no excuse. There's absolutely no excuse for you not being a wealthy, rich, white girl. No excuse. And that's like this entire book. And I'm just like, why are you telling people this, you stupid bitch? But yeah, I was also very traumatized. Like, one of the things that stood out the most, like if you want to see like a full rant on it, like watch the video. I'll link it in the comments too. But one of the things that stood out as like the most traumatizing thing is she was like freelancing as an event planner, and somebody asked her if she had catering experience, and she straight up lied to their face and said, oh yeah, I've got tons of catering experience. And she was like, and I had a month and I taught myself how to cater in a month. Bitch, you could have poisoned people. You have no idea any information on like health codes for like catering. You're not a business set up for catering that's like governed by the FDA and like that's purposely there to like prevent you from poisoning people with whatever trash that you fucking cooked. And you're in your book encouraging people to like straight up fucking lie about their abilities without giving them like any consequences to like if they're caught in these lies. Like, I get, be like, you know what, I have a lot of event planning experience. I haven't catered directly, but I've worked with a lot of caterers. I can do this if you give me the chance, or I can find a good caterer, or anything like that. That would have been fine. But just straight up saying, like, on page, she was like, yeah, I lied and said that I had a lot of catering experience, even though I had no experience, and I just spent the next month teaching myself how to do it. Like, that's literally what she said. And you're just like, bitch, no. Don't encourage people to do this. It was, the whole thing was traumatizing. Like, I just get angry thinking about everything that's going on right now because I've just talked about 10 books that I absolutely hated. And I'm gonna go drink some water, lower my blood pressure, maybe have a nice glass of wine, but calm down and come back tomorrow for my most surprising books of 2020. And those are going to be 5 books that were surprising in good ways and 5 books that are surprising in bad ways. But I will see you for that tomorrow. Let me know down in the comments like what your most disappointing or what your worst book of the year was. And if you happen to like any of the books that I hated. And I will see you tomorrow. Bye.